Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive into some fascinating research.
Yes.
Today, we're going to be looking at
Yeah.
the forces that secretly shape our decisions.
Right.
Um, and we're going beyond simple logic today, folks,
Yeah.
and uncovering the surprising power of social norms,
Yeah.
ownership, and expectations.
That's right.
We got some really interesting audio excerpts and academic research lined up for you.
Right.
So let's dive right in. Our journey today
Yeah.
starts in a place I think we're all pretty familiar with,
Absolutely.
the workplace.
Yes.
It's interesting how companies are realizing that social norms can be a really powerful tool to
Absolutely.
build loyalty and get their employees motivated.
Yeah, they're really moving away from that old work for pay model.
Yeah, it's like instead of just that paycheck, they're trying to
Right.
cultivate a sense of community. And
Exactly.
like we're all in this together kind of thing.
It's a shift from what we would call market norms, where it's all about transactions and individual gain, to social norms, where you have that sense of shared purpose and commitment.
I can see how that might work, but doesn't it also put a lot of pressure on employees to constantly be on, even outside of work hours?
That's a really good point. And that's where the idea of reciprocity comes in.
Okay,
For social norms to work effectively, there has to be a balance of give and take.
makes sense.
Companies need to offer their employees support and security in return for that dedication.
Yeah, like what kinds of things?
Things like generous sick leave,
Right.
strong sense of job security.
Okay, so you're more likely to go the extra mile for a company that you feel has your back right.
Precisely think about how you feel when your boss acknowledges your hard work or offers you flexibility when you need it.
Right.
These small gestures create a really powerful sense of loyalty,
Okay.
and it makes you much more willing to contribute.
So are there any real-world examples of this social norm approach actually working?
Absolutely. The open source software community is a fantastic illustration. You have all these incredibly talented individuals just devoting their time and energy to these projects, not for a paycheck, but for the social reward of contributing to this shared goal.
That's really cool.
It's a great example.
It seems like this social exchange model has a lot of potential,
Yeah.
but are there any downsides?
Well, one of the biggest threats is this focus on short-term profits.
Okay.
If companies prioritize cost-cutting measures
Yeah.
and outsourcing, they risk undermining the foundation of that trust and loyalty that they're trying to build.
So if company starts cutting back on benefits or making employees feel expendable, they're basically sending a message that the social contract is off.
Exactly. And that can lead to a decrease in employee motivation, and then we just go back to that purely transactional work for pay mentality.
Right back where we started.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've seen how social norms can play out in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about ownership. I understand we're heading to Duke University for this next bit.
Yes, and we're not going for a lecture.
No.
We're diving into the world of Duke basketball,
Okay.
where they have a fascinating ticket lottery system that perfectly illustrates the endowment effect in action.
Now, I've heard Duke basketball fans are serious about their team.
Yeah.
But a lottery system? What is that all about?
Well, tickets to Duke basketball games are incredibly sought after.
Okay.
Students will camp out for weeks
Wow.
in this makeshift tent city that they call Krasevskyville.
Okay.
They respond to random air horn calls to prove they're present,
Really?
all for a chance to win tickets.
That's dedication.
It's a big deal.
But what does this have to do with the endowment effect?
Researchers at Duke conducted a study to see how owning something, in this case a basketball ticket, affects its perceived value.
Okay.
They asked students who won tickets in this lottery how much they would sell them for,
Okay.
and they asked students who didn't win how much they'd be willing to pay for a ticket.
So I'm guessing there was a difference?
There was a huge difference.
Well,
Students who owned the tickets valued them at around $2,400,
oh, wow.
while those who didn't own tickets were only willing to pay around $170.
Wow.
That means simply owning the ticket made students think it was worth over 14 times more.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
So what does that mean for me, in my everyday life?
This means that you're likely to overprice items that you're selling.
Okay.
Because you own something, you automatically think it's worth more than somebody else might.
That's something to think about next time I'm selling something on eBay.
Absolutely.
But why did we get so attached to our possessions anyway?
Well, the source we're looking at outlines 3 quirks of ownership that help explain this.
Okay.
The first is that we quickly become attached to what we own.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I get attached to things so easily.
Yeah, it happens.
But what are the other quirks?
Well, the second quirk is that we tend to focus on what we lose when we give something up, even if it means missing out on a potential gain.
So it's like that fear of missing out, but with our stuff.
Exactly. And finally, the third quirk is that we assume other people will share our perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And value our possessions as much as we do.
Totally guilty of that.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised when someone doesn't see the value in something that I'm selling.
Yeah, it's tough to let go.
So we've talked about how ownership can kind of cloud our judgment.
Absolutely.
Are we going to uncover any more of these hidden forces in our deep dive today?
We're just getting started. We're about to delve into some research that might surprise you.
Okay.
That examines how our emotions, specifically arousal, can completely change the way we make decisions.
This sounds intriguing. What kind of research are we talking about?
Well, a study conducted at Berkeley explored how sexual arousal affected decision-making in male college students.
Okay.
They asked a series of questions about their sexual preferences, their attitudes towards risky behavior, and even their willingness to engage in immoral acts.
I can already see where this is going.
Well, the researchers found that when the students were aroused, their responses changed dramatically.
Okay.
They were much more likely to endorse risky sexual behavior and much less likely to consider the consequences of their actions.
So it's like our emotions can just hijack our rational thinking.
Exactly. The source compares this to the Mr. Hyde effect.
Okay.
Like in Robert Louis Stevenson's famous novel.
Right.
When we're in the grip of these intense emotions, a different side of ourselves can emerge.
So it's not just about sex. Right? Any strong emotion like anger or excitement could lead us to make bad decisions.
Precisely. Think about a time when you were really angry.
Yeah.
Did you say or do something that you later regretted?
Yeah.
Or maybe you were so excited about a new opportunity that you didn't think through all the details before jumping in.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been there.
It happens to all of us.
So how do we avoid falling victim to these emotional traps?
Well, one powerful strategy is the concept of pre-commitment, which we'll be diving into later in this deep dive. It's about making decisions in advance when you're in a calm and rational state.
Okay.
To guide your actions when emotions are running high.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've explored social norms and ownership.
Right.
And now we've seen how emotions can sway our choices.
Yeah.
What's next on our deep dive agenda?
We're going to tackle that age-old nemesis procrastination.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to see how pre-commitment can help us break free from its grasp. But first, let's take a look at a clever experiment called the door game.
A door game. That sounds intriguing.
In this experiment, participants were presented with 3 doors on a computer screen.
Okay.
And each door represented an opportunity to earn money by clicking on it.
Right.
However, there was a catch. Unvisited doors would start to disappear, creating this sense of urgency.
So there's like those limited time offers that make you feel like you have to act now.
Exactly.
Or miss out.
And guess what?
Right.
Participants ended up chasing those closing doors, even though it meant earning less money overall.
Wow, that's so interesting.
It's human nature.
So how does this relate to procrastination?
Well, think about it this way. We often procrastinate on important tasks because we get distracted by other seemingly more urgent or appealing opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are.
Like, I'll put off working on a big project to check my email or scroll through social media.
Right.
But then I always end up regretting it later.
It's a common trap.
Yeah.
The door game shows how our natural tendency to chase after those fleeting opportunities can lead us to neglect the tasks that truly matter.
Right. So I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Good.
So is pre-commitment the key to overcoming this procrastination trap?
It's a really powerful tool, but before we get into the specifics, let's explore another study that examines procrastination in a more academic setting.
Right.
So researchers gave students the option to choose their own deadlines for their papers.
Oh, okay.
Some students could set their own deadlines, others had no deadlines. And a third group had externally imposed deadlines like what you'd get from a professor.
So I'm guessing the students with no deadlines just partied all semester.
You might think so, but surprisingly, the students with externally imposed deadlines actually performed the best.
Really?
Those with no deadlines did the worst, and the students who could set their own deadlines fell somewhere in between.
Interesting. So even a little bit of structure can make a big difference.
Exactly. Even though self-imposed deadlines weren't as effective as external ones, they still provided a valuable tool for combating procrastination.
Okay.
It suggests that giving people a sense of agency and control over their schedules can help them stay on track.
Okay.
And that brings us back to the power of pre-commitment.
So how does pre-commitment work in practice?
It's about making a decision in advance when you're in a cool, rational state.
Okay.
To guide your actions when temptation or distraction arise.
Okay.
For example, if you want to save more money, you might set up automatic transfers to your savings account each month.
Right, so it's like outsmarting your future self, knowing that you might not always have the willpower to resist temptation.
Exactly. By making that decision in advance, you're essentially removing the need for willpower in the moment.
That's a great strategy, but how do we apply this concept to real-world challenges like procrastination in healthcare and finances? That's what I'm really curious about.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into in the next part of this deep dive.
Right.
We'll explore some innovative solutions that leverage pre-commitment to help us make better decisions, especially when it comes to our health and finances.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm ready to uncover more of these hidden forces and learn how to use them to my advantage.
Let's do it. Welcome back to the deep dive, folks.
All right, so we were just talking about pre-commitment.
Yes.
And how it can potentially help us overcome that procrastination.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things like healthcare and personal finances.
Right, because we know we should do these things.
Right.
But actually doing them.
Yeah, it's a whole different story.
It's
So one idea the research had was something called a self-control credit card.
Yes.
A credit card designed to help you control your spending.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, imagine setting personalized limits for different categories, like groceries, eating out, online shopping.
Oh, okay.
Each gets its own budget, and the card helps you stick to it.
So if I'm an online impulse buyer, I could set a strict limit for that category.
Exactly. And if you go...
And the card would just cut me off.
You could even have penalties, like a small fee that gets transferred to your savings,
Yeah.
or maybe even an alert that gets sent to your partner.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, a little bit of accountability.
It's like gamifying your finances in a way.
Exactly, and it takes away that in-the-moment weakness that we all have.
Yeah, for sure.
The source also mentions a more low-tech approach, the ice glass method.
Okay, this one sounds familiar. This is what I think it is.
You got it.
Freezing your credit card in a block of ice.
Literally.
It sounds so silly.
It does, but that delay between wanting to buy something and actually being able to can be surprisingly effective.
That's true. It's like it gives your rational brain time to catch up to your emotional brain.
Exactly.
But what about preventive health care? How do we pre-commit to things that we might even be avoiding thinking about?
That's a good question. The research draws an interesting parallel to something that Ford Motor Company did.
Okay.
Remember how they simplified car maintenance schedules?
Yeah, instead of having like a million different things to track,
Right.
it's just get this service done every X miles or whatever.
Exactly. Super straightforward.
Yeah.
So imagine applying that to healthcare essential checkups bundled together.
Okay.
Maybe even with a small financial incentive for completing the whole package.
So like put down a deposit that you only get back if you show up for all your appointments.
Exactly.
Oh, I could see that working.
Right. And what if we could make those checkups a little more appealing, maybe even borrow some tricks from those expectation experiments?
Oh, instead of like sterile waiting rooms?
Yeah.
You've got comfy chairs and calming music, maybe even healthy snacks.
It becomes less medical chore and more self-care spa day.
Yeah, I like that.
It's all about reframing those expectations,
Right.
making the healthy choice the more desirable one.
Pre-commitment isn't just for spending or doctor's visits, though.
No, it's not. The source also discusses debt blogging.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. People publicly documenting their journey out of debt.
Exactly. It's a great example of social norms in action.
Yeah.
Publicly committing to a goal, sharing your progress, even the struggles.
Yeah.
It creates accountability.
You also get that support from a community of people that are going through the same thing.
Exactly, like an online financial support group.
I like it.
And the source suggests taking it a step further, remember that self-control credit card idea.
Yeah, the one with the customizable limits and penalties.
Imagine a version specifically designed for debt repayment.
Okay.
It could automate your payments, track your progress, even send alerts to a trusted friend for extra support.
It's like having a personal finance coach built into your credit card.
Exactly.
I love that idea.
Yeah, the source mentions actually pitching this to a bank.
Oh, really? What happened?
Well, nothing came of it, unfortunately.
No.
The bank seemed interested at first, but they never followed through.
I wonder why.
It's hard to say. Maybe the idea was just too innovative, too different from how banks usually operate.
Yeah, maybe they weren't ready for it.
It's a reminder that good ideas don't always get adopted, especially when they're challenging the status quo.
That's true.
Hmm.
But hopefully someday somebody will pick up that torch and run with it.
I hope so, too.
I want to circle back to the power of expectations for a bit.
Okay.
We talked about how they can influence our perception of things like food and drinks.
Right.
But the source goes deeper and suggests that expectations can even influence our perceptions of things like art.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The research suggests we're more likely to appreciate a painting
Okay.
if we believe that the artist is skilled or famous.
So like if I see a messy abstract painting, and I know it's by some renowned artist,
Right.
I might think, oh, there's some depth here that I'm just not getting.
Exactly. Our preconceived notions can really color our perceptions even when we're looking at the same object.
And this has huge implications for things like marketing and branding.
Absolutely. Think about those luxury car commercials.
Yeah.
They're not just selling transportation, they're selling a feeling, a lifestyle.
Right.
They tap into our aspirations and make us believe that owning that car will somehow elevate our status or make us more successful.
It's crazy how powerful those subtle cues and messages can be.
It's really remarkable.
We've talked about the Coke versus Pepsi thing before,
Yeah.
but I understand there's some actual brain science behind this whole brand loyalty thing.
There is. fMRI studies have shown that while both Coke and Pepsi activate those reward centers in our brains,
Okay.
Coke also triggers activity in areas related to memory and emotion.
So it's like Coke's branding and advertising is literally imprinted on our brains, influencing our preferences on a subconscious level.
It really seems that way, and it just highlights how much our experiences are shaped not just by sensory input, but also by our beliefs, memories, and the stories we tell ourselves.
This is really making me think about how much of my own decision-making is influenced by these hidden forces.
That's the first step to taking more control, increased awareness.
For sure.
And speaking of control, in the final part of this deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to be discussing the ethical implications of these powerful forces
Right.
and how we can use them responsibly.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm ready to explore the ethics of all this. So we've uncovered some pretty powerful forces at play here in our decision-making.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
But now I'm kind of curious about the ethics of it all.
Right. It's one thing to understand how these forces work, but actually using that knowledge responsibly is a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, especially when it comes to trying to influence other people, like in marketing and advertising.
Right. We've seen how companies use these techniques to shape what consumers buy.
Yeah, where's that line between persuasion and straight-up manipulation?
It's a tough question, and one that marketers are grappling with constantly.
Yeah, the research we're looking at doesn't really give any easy answers,
No, it doesn't.
but it does encourage us to be more critical of the messages that are constantly being thrown at us.
Right. To be aware that we're being influenced even when we don't realize it.
Yeah, and to ask ourselves, like, is this really what I want, or am I just being nudged into it?
Exactly.
Food marketing is a great example.
Yeah.
We've talked about how expectations can actually change how things taste.
Right.
But what if those expectations are built on misleading labels or advertising?
That's where it gets tricky, you know? There's a difference between highlighting the genuine qualities of a product
Right.
and creating a completely false impression.
So as consumers, we need to read those labels carefully, do our research,
Absolutely.
and not just believe every flashy claim that we see.
Be informed, be empowered, make choices that actually match your values, not just what someone is trying to sell you.
I like that.
Good.
And what about using social norms ethically?
Yeah.
We talked about how powerful they can be, especially in the workplace.
Right. Well, the research really emphasizes the importance of reciprocity.
Okay.
If companies want that loyalty and dedication from their employees,
Yeah.
they need to be willing to give something back.
Like fair pay, benefits, real opportunities for growth.
Exactly. But there's a risk of going too far, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, pressuring employees to work tons of overtime, take on all these extra duties without providing adequate reward or support.
Yeah, that's crossing the line.
That's when it becomes manipulation.
Yeah.
It's about respecting employees' boundaries,
Wow.
remembering that they have lives outside of work.
Yeah, creating a workplace culture that values balance and well-being,
Exactly.
not just pushing for maximum output no matter the cost.
Right. The human cost.
We also talked about how ownership can influence our decisions.
Yes.
So what about the ethics of that?
Well, we learned about the endowment effect and how it makes us overvalue our own possessions.
Right.
So in negotiations or sales, transparency is key.
Yeah.
If you're selling something, be upfront about any flaws.
Right. No hiding information or trying to trick the buyer into thinking something's worth more than it actually is.
Exactly. It should be a fair exchange where both sides can make informed choices.
I like that.
And it's also important to be aware of power dynamics.
Okay. How so?
Well, if you're the expert in a situation
Right.
or the boss, don't take advantage of someone's lack of knowledge or their emotional attachment to something.
Right. Use your position responsibly.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's
Yes.
leave our listeners with some food for thought.
Good idea.
We've explored all these hidden forces, social norms, ownership expectations,
Powerful stuff.
powerful but potentially problematic.
Yes.
We've got tools like pre-commitment that can help us make better choices,
Right.
but we also need to use this knowledge ethically. So as you go about your day,
Yeah.
be mindful of these forces at play.
Be aware.
How are they influencing you?
Yeah, and how do you see them being used in the world around you?
Ask yourself, am I being persuaded or manipulated?
Good question.
Am I using what I know to help others or to take advantage?
Right. These aren't easy questions, but they're important ones.
Yeah, as we navigate this increasingly complex world of decision-making,
Absolutely.
the more we understand these hidden forces,
Yeah.
the better equipped we are to make choices that are truly aligned with our values.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.
Until next time, keep exploring.